Hello students, welcome to my channel Learning History Made Easy. In today's video, I will be explaining about two 10-mark question which is there in the model paper for reduced syllabus. In the next video, I will be completing this model paper. So before going into the video, if anyone is seeing the channel for the first time or if you have not subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe and share it with your friends. So without wasting time, let us get into the video. So in today's video, we are going to see about two essay questions which are included in the model paper for reduced syllabus. So the first essay question which we are going to learn is explain the life and achievements of Ashoka. Life and achievements of Ashoka. So this is a 10-mark question, and when we are answering a 10-mark question, we should always give importance to the headings and points. There should be an introduction, there should be a body of the essay, and there should be a conclusion for the essay. So as an introduction, we can write Ashoka was the greatest ruler of Mauryas. So the first point we can write to which dynasty he belonged to. So Ashoka was the greatest ruler of Mauryas. And he is mentioned in his edicts, that is in his edicts Ashoka is mentioned as Devanam Priya and also Priyadarshi. So in his edicts Ashoka is mentioned as Devanam Priya and Priyadarshi. So these 2 points you can write as a basic introduction. The next heading is the Kalinga War. So this was one of the most important incident in the life of Ashoka. So Kalinga War. So Kalinga was a powerful kingdom. The place Kalinga was a powerful kingdom. And Ashoka wanted to extend his power over this place. So naturally, when there is a powerful kingdom, the kings will want to extend their power. And to conquer Kalinga, Ashoka, he marched up to Kalinga. And there a fierce battle was fought. In Kalinga. So Kalinga was a powerful kingdom. Ashoka wanted to extend his power over Kalinga. He marched up to Kalinga, and there a fierce battle was fought. And the 13th Rock Edict gives us details about the conquest of Kalinga and its results. So the 13th Rock Edict is the one which gives information about Kalinga War and its result. 13th Rock Edict gives all information about Kalinga War and the results. So when a question is asked about life and achievements of Ashoka, we start with Ashoka was the greatest ruler of Mauryas, and his edicts, he is mentioned in his edicts as Devanam Priya and Priyadarshi. Then about the Kalinga War. The Kalinga War was fought in 261 BCE, and Kalinga was a very powerful kingdom. Ashoka wanted to extend his power, and he marched up to Kalinga, and there a fierce battle was fought. And the 13th Rock Edict gives us information about the Kalinga War and its result. So that is the thing about Kalinga War. Now let us continue with the information about Kalinga War. According to the 13th Rock Edict, we said that 13th Rock Edict gives us all information about Kalinga War. So according to the 13th Rock Edict, about 1 lakh soldiers were killed in the Kalinga War. 1 lakh soldiers were killed in the Kalinga War, and almost 1,50,000 soldiers were captured as prisoners. 1,50,000 soldiers were captured as prisoners after the Kalinga War. Now seeing all these, Ashoka was filled with sorrow. So Ashoka, he saw all the bloodshed and he was filled with sorrow. He felt that for conquering one a single place so many people were killed, that is almost 1 lakh people were killed and 1,50,000 soldiers were captured. So seeing all this bloodshed, Ashoka was filled with sorrow, and hence he decided that he will not fight another war, and this became, that is Kalinga war became his last war. Kalinga war became his last war because he was filled with sorrow after seeing the bloodshed, and it became his last war. So he decided that he will not wage any war in the future. So thus his policy, Ashoka's policy, changed from Digvijaya. So actually his policy was Digvijaya, that is military conquest. Normally all kings will do the same thing. They will conquer places and they will increase their power. So Ashoka changed his policy. Ashoka changed policy, that is from Digvijaya he changed his policy to Dharma Vijaya, that is the victory of Dharma, or winning the heart of the people. So winning the heart of people. Instead of winning places, he wanted to win heart of people. So his policy was changed from Digvijaya to Dharma Vijaya. And Kalinga war thus became a turning point in the life of Ashoka. So according to the 13th Rock Edict, about 1 lakh soldiers were killed and 1,50,000 soldiers were captured. Ashoka was filled with sorrow seeing the bloodshed in the war, and Ashoka decided that he will not wage any war in the future. So thus Kalinga war became his last war. After Kalinga war, Ashoka did not wage any other war. And after Kalinga war, Ashoka changed his foreign policy, that is he changed his policy from Digvijaya, that is from military conquest, to Dharma Vijaya, that is winning the heart of the people. So that is why it is said that Kalinga war was a turning point in the life of Ashoka. Now later, after Kalinga war, Ashoka embraced Buddhism. So Ashoka embraced Buddhism after the Kalinga war, and he embraced Buddhism under the influence of a saint. He embraced Buddhism under the influence of a Buddhist saint, Upagupta. The saint's name is Upagupta. Upagupta. He embraced Buddhism. So Ashoka embraced Buddhism under the influence of a Buddhist saint, and the saint's name is Upagupta. Now Ashoka's empire, the empire of Ashoka, what is the extent of Ashoka's empire? So Ashoka's empire extended from Kashmir and Afghanistan regions in the north. Kashmir and Afghanistan regions in the north. In the north, Kashmir and Afghanistan. Then to Karnataka in the south. In the southern side, it was Karnataka. Karnataka in the south. And from Bengal in the east, in the eastern side, Bengal in the east, and Sindh and Baluchistan in the west. Sindh and Baluchistan in the west. So this was the extent of Ashoka's empire. So Ashoka's empire extended from Kashmir and Afghanistan in the north to Karnataka in the south, Bengal in the east, Sindh and Baluchistan in the west. So this was the extent of Ashoka's empire. Now if we see some of his achievements, his edicts can be said as an achievement of Ashoka. Now let us see about the edicts of Ashoka. Ashoka was the first to issue edicts in India. So this was a great achievement. He was the first to issue edicts in India. Edicts in India. And what was the use of the edicts? These edicts help us to know about his ideals. From the edicts, we were able to know about the ideals of Ashoka, his outlook, and also about the religion, the society, and administration of Mauryas. Religion, society, and administration of Mauryas. We get all information about Mauryas from the edicts of Ashoka. So Ashoka was the first to issue edicts in India. From these edicts, they help us to know about his ideals, outlook, religion, society and administration of Mauryas. And the edicts, which all languages the edicts were written, the languages in which the edicts were written were Prakrit, Pali and Greek. The edicts were written in Prakrit, Pali and Greek, and the script used for writing the edicts were either Brahmi script or Kharoshthi script. So the languages were Prakrit, Pali and Greek, and the script used were Brahmi and Kharoshthi script. So Ashoka was the first to issue edicts in India, and they help us to know about his ideals, outlook and also about their religion, society and administration of Mauryas. The language of the edicts were Prakrit, Pali and Greek, and the script used for writing the edicts were Brahmi and Kharoshthi script. Now the next point here is the edicts are classified. So the edicts are classified into different groups. The edicts are classified into major rock edicts, that is one classification, major rock edicts. Then another is minor edicts. Major edicts are there, minor edicts are there. Then the next one is pillar inscriptions, and the last is cave inscriptions. So the edicts are classified into major rock edicts, minor rock edicts, pillar inscriptions and cave inscriptions. So these were how the edicts of Ashoka were classified. And some of the Ashokan edicts are also discovered in Karnataka. So let us see which all places in Karnataka, that is Maski in Raichur. Ashokan edicts have been discovered. Then Gavimata in Koppala. The next place is Gavimata in Koppala. So one is Maski in Raichur, Gavimata in Koppala, Brahmagiri and Siddhapura in Chitradurga. So Brahmagiri in Chitradurga. So all these places, Chitradurga, Ashokan edicts have been found in Karnataka. So edicts are classified into major rock edict, minor rock edict, pillar inscription and cave inscription. And the places where Ashokan edicts are found in Karnataka are Maski in Raichur, Gavimata in Koppala, Brahmagiri and Siddhapura in Chitradurga. And Ashoka was responsible for the spread of Buddhism inside India and outside India. Another achievement of Ashoka was the spread of Buddhism. He was a person who was responsible for the spread of Buddhism inside and outside India. Now Ashoka, he took a number of measures for spreading Buddhism. Ashoka took a number of measures to spread Buddhism. So the first thing was he visited Buddhist holy places. The first thing done by Ashoka was he visited Buddhist holy places. So Buddhist holy places like Lumbini Garden, Gaya, etc. Lumbini Garden, Gaya, etc. Like that he visited Buddhist holy places. That was the first measure taken by him to spread Buddhism. Then another thing was he built a number of monasteries. In different places. He constructed a number of monasteries. So all these he did for the spread of Buddhism. And he also spread the doctrines of Buddha by engraving them on rocks and pillars. So he engraved doctrines of Buddha. He engraved in different places, that is he engraved on rocks, he engraved on pillars, so that the teachings of Buddha would spread to different places. Then he appointed officers called as Dharma Mahamatras. That was another important achievement. Dharma Mahamatras were officers appointed by Ashoka to spread dharma among the people. Their main duty was to see whether everything is done according to dharma. So he appointed officers called as Dharma Mahamatras. Again, he also appointed officers called as Sri Adhyaksha Mahamatras. Sri Adhyaksha Mahamatras were also appointed, that is to take care of women and bring religious awareness among women. So that also was an important achievement of Ashoka. So the measures he did for spreading Buddhism, he visited Buddhist holy places like Lumbini Garden, Gaya, etc. He also built a number of monasteries all over the empire. He also spread the doctrine of Buddha by engraving them on rocks and pillars. He appointed officers called Dharma Mahamatras to spread Dharma among the people. He also appointed Sri Adhyaksha Mahamatras to take care of women and also to bring religious awareness among them. Now he also organized Buddhist councils. That was another contribution. He organized Buddhist councils, and one Buddhist council was organized at Pataliputra. So Ashoka organized Buddhist council at Pataliputra. And again he also sent missionaries to different places. He sent missionaries to preach Buddhism, and also they undertook many welfare activities. So missionaries preached Buddhism and also undertook many welfare activities. His main motto, Ashoka's main motto was service and sacrifice. So his main motto was his main motto was service and sacrifice. That was the main sacrifice was the main motto. And Ashoka was the only king in the history to renounce war after victory. So he was the only king in the history to renounce or to give up war after winning the war. After losing the war, maybe kings can give up, but Ashoka won the Kalinga war, but even after that he renounced the war. So hence he is the only king in history who renounced the war after victory. So Ashoka organized Buddhist council at Pataliputra. He also sent missionaries to preach Buddhism and to do welfare activities. His motto was service and sacrifice, and Ashoka was the only king in the history to renounce war even after victory. So all these are the achievements of Ashoka. So these are the points which you should write when an essay question, 10-mark question is asked about life and achievement of Ashoka. Now let us see the points once more. Explain the life and achievements of Ashoka. Ashoka was the greatest ruler of the Mauryas. He is mentioned in his edicts as Devanampriya and Priyadarshi. The Kalinga War, 261 BC. Kalinga was a powerful kingdom. Ashoka wanted to extend his power over Kalinga. He marched up to Kalinga and a fierce battle was fought. The 13th Rock Edict gives us details about the conquest of Kalinga and its results. According to that, about 1 lakh soldiers were killed and 1,50,000 soldiers were captured as prisoners of war. Ashoka was filled with sorrow in the sight of bloodshed, and this became his last war. He decided not to wage war in the future, and he changed his foreign policy from Digvijaya, military conquest, to Dharma Vijaya, winning the heart of the people. Kalinga War became the turning point in the life of Ashoka. He embraced Buddhism under the influence of a Buddhist saint Upagupta. Ashoka's empire extended from Kashmir and Afghanistan regions in the north to Karnataka in the south, and from Bengal in the east to Sindh and Balochistan in the west. Edicts of Ashoka. He was the first to issue edicts in India. They help us to know about his ideals, outlook, and also about their religion, society, and administration of Mauryas. The language of the edict is Prakrit, Pali, and Greek, and the script used is Brahmi and Kharoshthi. The edicts are classified into major rock edicts, minor rock edicts, pillar inscriptions, and cave inscriptions. Some of the Ashokan edicts which have been discovered in Karnataka are found in Maski in Raichur, Gavimata in Koppala, Brahmagiri and Siddhapura in Chitradurga, etc. Ashoka was responsible for the spread of Buddhism in India and also outside India. he took many measures to spread Buddhism. He visited Buddhist holy places like Lumbini Garden, Gaya, etc. and he also built a large number of monasteries all over the empire. He also spread the doctrines of Buddha by engraving them on rocks and pillars. He appointed officers called as Dharma Mahamatras to spread Dharma among the people. He also appointed Sri Adhyaksha Mahamatras to take care of women and bring religious awareness. He organized the third Buddhist council at Pataliputra. He also sent missionaries to preach Buddhism and undertook many welfare activities. Service and sacrifice was his motto. Ashoka was the only king in the history to renounce war even after victory. So now let us move on to the next important essay question in your model paper. The next question is, why is Gupta age called as Golden Age in Indian history? So the question is, Gupta age called as Golden Age in Indian history. So we are going to explain the reasons why Gupta age is called as Golden Age in Indian history. So again, as I said, essay question, we start with an introduction. So in introduction, what are we going to write? Gupta age has a unique position in the history of India. The Gupta age has a unique or a special position in the history of India. It has given all-round development. There was all-round development during the Gupta period. And because of its all-round development, it is compared to many ages. So because of Gupta age all-round development, it is compared to the age of Pericles of Greece. Gupta age is compared to the age of Pericles of Greece, the age of Augustus Caesar, the age of Augustus Caesar of Rome, and it is also compared to the age of Queen Elizabeth of England. Queen Elizabeth of England. So because of its all-round development, it is compared to the age of Pericles of Greece, Augustus Caesar of Rome, and Queen Elizabeth of England. So that there was that much development in Gupta age. So the age has a unique position in the history of India, and due to the all-round development, it is compared to the age of Pericles of Greece, Augustus Caesar of Rome, and Queen Elizabeth of England. So these 2 points you can write as introduction. Then we will move on to the first point, that is revival of Hinduism. So in Gupta age, there was a great revival of Hinduism. So the great Gupta emperors were followers of Hinduism. So during the Gupta time, the Gupta rulers or the Gupta emperors were followers of Hinduism. They were followers of Hinduism. Even though they were followers of Hinduism, they were very tolerant towards other religion like Buddhism and Jainism. So even though they were followers of Hinduism, they allowed others to follow their own religion, that is, they were tolerant towards other religion like Buddhism and Jainism. The Hindu religion received great encouragement during this time. Hindu religion was having a special encouragement during the time of Guptas, because there was a revival of Hindu religion during the Gupta age. The rulers performed Vedic rites and sacrifices. Many Vedic rites, rituals, sacrifices, all were performed by the rulers during this Gupta period, and many Vishnu temples were constructed. That was another important point, that is many temples were constructed, and that too the temples which were constructed mostly were Vishnu temples. So many Vishnu temples were constructed during this time, and along with Vishnu worship, Shaiva and Shakti cult were also popular. Shaiva and Shakti cult were also popular during this time. So that means Hinduism was greatly encouraged. So there was a revival of Hinduism during this time. The Gupta emperors were followers of Hinduism, but they were very tolerant towards other religions like Jainism and Buddhism. The Hindu religion received a great encouragement during this time, and the rulers performed Vedic rites and sacrifices. Many Vishnu temples were constructed during this period. Shaiva and Shakti cult were also popular during the time of Guptas. Now, after revival of Hinduism, let us move on to the second point, that is education. So, what was the development in education during Gupta period? Kings themselves were great scholars and educationalists. The kings themselves were great scholars. Kings themselves were great scholars, and they were also educationalists. So kings themselves were great scholars and educationalists, and other than that, there were a number of universities which developed during this time, like Nalanda University, Takshashila University. All these universities developed during the time of Guptas, and these universities attracted foreign students also. There were not only Indian students, foreign students were also attracted towards these universities. Now, there were many places which were centers of education, like Pataliputra and Vallabhi. These places were considered as centers of education. And the important subjects which were taught during the Gupta time, the important subjects were Puranas, then literature, philosophy, science, etc. So many important subjects were there. These were the important subjects which were taught. So altogether, education was given a lot of importance during Gupta age. So in education, kings themselves were great scholars and educationalists. Number of universities developed during this time, that is like Nalanda, Takshashila, etc. The universities also attracted foreign students. Pataliputra and Vallabhi were great centers of education. The important subjects which were taught were Puranas, literature, philosophy, science, etc. So that was the development or achievement in the field of education. Now let us see about literature. We said that there was all-round development during Gupta age. So let us see literature. The Gupta age is called as the golden age of Sanskrit literature. Golden age of Sanskrit literature. So that much development was there in Sanskrit literature that it was called as golden age of Sanskrit literature. Samudragupta, the king Samudragupta, he was called as king among poets. So he was called as king among poets. So he was such a great poet that he was called as king among poets. And Chandragupta too had the Navaratnas in his court. The ruler Chandragupta, Chandragupta too had Navaratnas in his court. So that also was a very notable thing. So Gupta age is called as golden age in Sanskrit literature. Samudragupta was called as king among poets. Chandragupta too had Navaratnas in his court. And one of the greatest poets during that time was Kalidasa. He was one of the greatest poet as well as dramatist. During this time. And some of the important works of Kalidasa are Shakuntala, most important work of Kalidasa, Shakuntala, then Raghuvamsha, Meghaduta, etc. Were the important works of Kalidasa. So Kalidasa was the most important poet and dramatist of ancient India. His important works are Shakuntala, Raghuvamsha, Meghaduta, etc. So all these were the contributions in the field of literature. Now let us see the contributions in the field of science and technology. So in the field of science and technology, Aryabhatta was the greatest mathematician and astronomer of the period. We all know that Aryabhatta was the greatest mathematician and he was also an astronomer, also an famous astronomer, and he lived during Gupta age. So Aryabhatta was one of the famous mathematician and astronomer. His famous books, the famous book of Aryabhatta was Surya Siddhanta. One important work is Surya Siddhanta. Another important work is Aryabhattiya. Aryabhattiya are the two important works of Aryabhatta. Surya Siddhanta and Aryabhattiya were the important works of Aryabhatta. And he described about the decimal system in these books. He described about the decimal system. Now, other than Aryabhatta, another important mathematician was Brahmagupta. Brahmagupta. Brahmagupta, he said about the importance of zero. So, Brahmagupta, he said about the importance of zero. Another great scientist, Varahamihira. Varahamihira, he was a great scientist. He wrote the work Pancha Siddhantika. Pancha Siddhantika was a work written by Varahamihira, and also he wrote Brihat Jataka. Brihat Jataka. These were the two works written by Varahamihira, Pancha Siddhantika and Brihat Jataka. So in the field of science and technology, Aryabhatta was an important mathematician and astronomer of the period. His famous books are Surya Siddhanta and Aryabhattiya. He described about decimal system in his work. Brahmagupta said about the importance of zero. Varahamihira, one of the great scientists, wrote Pancha Siddhantika and Brihat Jataka. Now, some more points are there regarding science and technology. Dhanvantari, he was regarded as the father of Indian medicine. So, the father of Indian medicine, or he is called as the father of Ayurveda, Dhanvantari. So, he was called as the father of Indian medicine. And another important example of the development of science and technology is the Mehrauli iron pillar. The Mehrauli iron pillar is considered as an example of the outstanding metallurgical skill of the people of Gupta age. Metallurgical skill. Why is it known for the outstanding metallurgical skill? Why? Because the pillar has not rusted. The pillar has not rusted. Even after so many years, it has been exposed to sun and rain for centuries. So the Mehrauli iron pillar have been exposed to sun and rain for so many years, for centuries. But even then, it has not rusted. We all know that iron will catch rust, but this Mehrauli iron pillar has not rusted even though it is exposed to sun and rain. So that shows the metallurgical skill of the people of Gupta age. So Dhanvantari was the father of Indian medicine. Mehrauli iron pillar shows the outstanding metallurgical skill of the people. Why? Because the pillar has not rusted even after being exposed to sun and rain for centuries. So those were the contributions in the field of science and technology. Now finally, we will see the development in the field of art and architecture during Gupta age. Art and architecture. The basic structural features of Indian temple architecture developed during Gupta age. So, regarding Indian temple architecture, its basic structural feature of basic temple architecture developed during Gupta age. So Indian temple architecture's basic structural feature developed during this period, and some centers of their artistic activity, we can say that Banaras, Patna, Devagar, all these were the centers of their artistic activities. And the most important temple we can see is the Dashavatara temple. Dashavatara temple. The temple is situated at Devagar. Dashavatara temple at Devagar was the first temple of Gupta period. First temple of the Gupta period, Dashavatara temple, located at Devagar. Other than that, a number of statues of Buddha also were erected during this time. Statues of Buddha. A number of statues of Buddha were erected during this time. They also gave importance to painting. The Gupta rulers gave importance to painting, and there were many cave temples in Ajanta. Many cave temples in Ajanta. There were many cave temples in Ajanta, and where they also painted scenes from the life of Buddha. Scenes from the life of Buddha were also painted in some of the cave temples. So, regarding art and architecture, the basic structural feature of Indian temple architecture developed during Gupta period. Banaras, Patna, Devagar were the centers of artistic activity. The Dashavatara temple of Devagar was the first temple of Gupta period. Number of statues of Buddha were also erected. They gave special encouragement to painting. The rulers built many cave temples in Ajanta, where they also painted the scenes from the life of Buddha. Now, because of the contribution in all these fields, now we have seen contributions in fields like literature, art and architecture, science and technology, education, revival of Hinduism. So, because of all these achievements, Gupta age is called as the golden age in Indian history. So, when the question is coming after the introduction, you can write about revival of Hinduism. Then you can first you can write revival of Hinduism. Then you can write about education. Then literature. Then next point you can write about science and technology. Science and technology. And last you can write about art and architecture. And finally, as a conclusion, you can write, because of the contributions in all these fields, Gupta age is called as golden age in the history of India. So like this you can conclude the answer. So now let us see all the points once more. Question will be, why is Gupta age called the golden age in Indian history? Introduction. Gupta age has a unique position in the history of India. Due to the all-round development, it is compared to the age of Pericles of Greece, Augustus Caesar of Rome, and Queen Elizabeth of England. Revival of Hinduism. The Gupta emperors were followers of Hinduism, but they were tolerant towards other religions like Buddhism and Jainism. The Hindu religion received great encouragement. The rulers performed Vedic rites and sacrifices. Many Vishnu temples were constructed during this period. Shaiva and Shakti cult were also popular. Education. The kings themselves were great scholars and educationalists. Number of universities developed during this age. Example, Nalanda, Takshashila. Universities attracted foreign students also. Pataliputra and Vallabhi were great centers of education. Important subjects taught were Puranas, literature, philosophy, science, etc. Literature. The Gupta age is called the golden age of Sanskrit literature. Samudragupta is called as king among poets. Chandragupta too has the Navaratnas in his court. Kalidasa was the greatest poet and dramatist of ancient India. His famous works are Shakuntala, Raghuvamsha, Meghaduta, etc. Now regarding science and technology, Aryabhatta was the greatest mathematician and astronomer of this period. His famous book was Surya Siddhanta Aryabhattiya. He described about the decimal system in his work. Brahmagupta said about the importance of zero. Varahamihira, one of the greatest scientists, wrote Pancha Siddhantika and Brihad Jataka. Dhanvantari was regarded as the father of Indian medicine. The Mehrauli iron pillar is an outstanding example of the metallurgical skill. The pillar has not rusted even after being exposed to sun and rain for centuries. Art and architecture. The basic structural feature of Indian temple architecture developed during Gupta period. Banaras, Patna, Devagar were the centers of the artistic activity. Dashavatara temple of Devagar was the first temple of Gupta period. Number of statues of Buddha were erected. The Gupta gave special encouragement to painting. The rulers built many cave temples in Ajanta. They also painted scenes from the life of Buddha. Because of all these achievements, Gupta age is called as the golden age in Indian history. So I hope you understood these two essay questions very clearly. The coming video, 2 more essay questions will be explained, and by that I will finish the first model paper. So please make the complete model paper very thorough. After that, 1 more model paper will be given, which has been published by the university only for reduced syllabus. So I hope you have understood all the points, and if you have any doubts, you can please ask in the comment section. Please do like, share and subscribe to my channel. Your likes and comments will give me a lot of encouragement to make more and more videos. So I hope to see you all soon in the coming video. Thank you for watching.